Hey there, this is Ollie Knight from Quant Strats in London. This is a special edition of FinTech Focus TV. I'm here with Hamza Chaudhry. Has some very interesting topics ahead of his speech tomorrow, his presentation tomorrow, I should say, across systematic FX and fixed income strategies. So wanted to just start off by perhaps giving a bit of a lay of the land to our audience. Fixed income, I think particularly, has been an asset class which has been underrepresented in systematic strategies or even quantitative research.
Yeah.
Interested in your perspective on how that's evolved over the last few years and your own role in that kind of evolution.
Yeah, so I think the kind of major trend has always been equities focused.
Absolutely.
So it started off with like a lot of quants moving into the equity space, the famous guys like Jim Simmons, Man Groups of the world. And that space got involved very quickly with loads of research, loads of factors, loads of practitioners kind of pushing that space forward. And I think fixed income, due to various reasons, has not had that yet. And I think it's just about starting to. So we're seeing really cool papers, really cool research come out, stuff that's more in line with what's happening in practice, which at first there was that divide. But now we are starting to see some direct research that is very close to what we do in the day-to-day actually start to come out. And it's very exciting because it's kind of uncharted territory. There's a lot of stuff that you can't just port over from equities.
Yeah.
And it's very exciting to kind of push that ball forward.
Start to expand, yeah.
Yeah.
What, are there still obstacles which you're facing in kind of systematizing that particular space? I imagine on an institutional level you might run into some things or...
Yeah, so I guess there's two sides. One's perhaps on the trading. A lot of it is still OTC, over the phone or through Bloomberg. It is starting to get quite systematized and more electronic. I think it's about 60% or so in US IG and a bit lower in European IG. So we are seeing some of that come through, but it does mean that a large portion of your sort of analysis after you've built your factors and after you find out what sources of signals you want to pursue, you have to really consider the liquidity side of it because you may not be able to execute on screen prices or even what your traders are seeing. So there's a big kind of dual element there that you have to kind of take into account.
Sure.
And you may not necessarily have that problem with equities.
And how about FX?
FX, not too much on there. We don't really do too much on FX. I'm more on the systematic credit and rate side.
Okay.
But that's definitely more liquid.
Yeah.
And we do have a long short FX, but I don't manage that.
Understood. Okay, cool. Another core theme of your presentation tomorrow is talking about factor-based modeling.
Yes.
I'm interested, I guess, perhaps for the uninitiated, you can give a bit of a background about what factor-based modeling is, and we can talk about the specifics of it.
Yeah, so I suppose we could take it back to Fama French, famous paper, three-factor model. The idea being that you can produce individual signals, call it things like momentum and quality, that from a bottoms-up perspective, you can feed into an optimization problem to build up a portfolio from the bottoms up, subject to various constraints. That approach is very well respected, and very many people do it within equities and even within commodities and FX. And it's only just started to come into fixed income. And so a lot of the nuance and kind of processes involved in doing it within fixed income involves, in part, doing a lot of that research from scratch.
Sure.
And even if there are papers out there, there is kind of a reproducibility crisis, which I'll talk about tomorrow as well, where the vast majority of that research you just can't use,
right?
And you're not able to reproduce it.
Yeah.
So I think the job is, in part, also heavily involved in trying to push that ball forward and trying to figure out what actually does work, and testing your own theories as to what you see in the market and seeing if that's something you can systematize or create an alpha out of.
Interesting.
So it's quite fun.
And I wonder as well, talking about the kind of innovation or even revolution within systematic fixed income, does it help to have influx of people like yourself who perhaps come from less obvious backgrounds in the space? You know, I noticed, for example, you originally worked in crypto.
Yeah.
I wonder if these kind of unique experiences help this drive for innovation.
Yeah, for sure. I think it definitely helps. I think it's kind of a trend amongst quants in general as well, that you don't necessarily need to know much about finance to get in. It obviously helps and you can pick it up on the job, but having that other perspective on a brand new asset class, whether it's coming from crypto or economics or even something completely left field, it's just a different way of thinking, and it really does help crack the problems, especially when there's not really that much research out there. You really do need people to come up with those ideas and see things in a different way, and it does help quite a bit.
Is it fair to say that certain asset classes, perhaps including fixed income, perhaps historically have suffered almost from a bias of a lack of exposure outside of kind of people's core focus. You know, I'm thinking people who stayed in that space for 30 years and just kind of, it's an echo chamber become created almost, or what's your view on that?
Perhaps maybe on the discretionary side, and perhaps maybe historically that might have been the case. I think it's very much like the old school equity market in a way. But that has changed quite a lot since the financial crisis, and in general, things are becoming much more open, hopefully. I mean, in general as well, there's a lot of blog posts coming out from asset managers and hedge funds. AQR does a lot of stuff on this as well. Barclays QPS team does a lot of stuff, and I think it's just getting a lot of people involved and talking about the space in general does help evolve it and move it forward.
Yeah, and that kind of brings me into your role as an advisory board member at Quant Strats. We were talking about that just before we started filming. It feels like there is perhaps a general move in the industry from secrecy to actually kind of talking openly. You know, we have, like, I think Cliff Asness from AQR, like, being on podcasts and talking, and Steve Cohen does a similar thing.
Yeah.
What do you think about this trend?
I enjoy it a lot. I do think it's kind of fun to talk about the stuff that you work on every day, the stuff that you get to nerd out about every day. It's great to see that in the open. And it does also bring a lot of visibility on the space, because it is kind of an asset class not many people look at compared to equities, but there's a lot of return there, especially when you're this new in the market. And so it is very fun to be able to see people talk about it and help kind of get some eyes on the space.
Excellent, cool. And with the kind of 2 days ahead of us in mind, outside of your own presentation, is there anything you're particularly excited for? Or
I mean, there's obviously a trend of AI and agentic modelling, and that's kind of been everywhere. I'm kind of curious to see if there's any negatives being talked about on that side by any of the other people on the panelists. I think that'll be really interesting, because obviously I have my own experience with it, and there's definitely a place for it, and I think anybody not using it day to day will definitely see the effects of it. But there are negatives, and those aren't talked about as much, so I'm kind of curious to see if anybody brings those up.
I think from my own perspective, a lot of the rhetoric I've observed at Quant Strats, also other industry events over the last couple of years, with regards to AI, it's almost been a bit hypothetical, I think, and it's kind of like AI is this crazy, scary thing. It almost kind of elicits a joke or a laughter just by mentioning it. I wonder if in this conference particularly, we're going to start to see more of a shift to kind of, as you said, like actually talking about the practical case studies of using it.
Exactly.
People actually sharing their own lived experiences with it.
I think that's definitely the hope. I do use it day to day. Ever since they came out, I think it's hard not to nowadays. It speeds up the entire research process by a lot. There's some really cool stuff you can do with agentic AI now as well. But there are obviously negatives, and I think having a nuanced discussion about it instead of just being just overtly positive or overtly jokey about it will be kind of interesting to see.
Excellent. And then just finally, I suppose you are relatively new to the industry in comparison to some of the other people who will be here today. I wonder if you have any advice or thoughts from your own experience to kind of aspiring quant researchers looking to get into the space. How would you reflect on your own experience and how that might help them?
I think definitely being curious is probably, it sounds kind of general, but it is kind of the biggest asset you have. Like, especially when you're in school, you need to kind of study things above and beyond what you're getting taught. They need to apply it. So doing a lot of coding projects, building out your own strategies, even trading with real money with your own strategies is quite fun, because you have skin in the game and you start worrying a bit more about the type of numbers you're seeing in your research. Then there's actual risk there. That stuff really helps, and also just reaching out to people in the industry. If you see an alma mater or someone that you've have some connection with, definitely reach out. People are always happy to talk about what they do, and there is a big disconnect between practice and the literature. So being able to bridge that gap by talking to people is definitely super useful.
Excellent.